We're back from the Olympic break. Welcome to NHL Wraparound Short Shifts. This is Friday, 27th of February, 2026. Your partners in crime, Vic and Neil, with you. I got to tell you something, that the biggest adjustment that I have had to make is actually going back to watching night hockey after 2 weeks of everything being during the day.
Yeah, isn't it great? You know, you get to watch it at night instead of during the daytime, which is something that personally I detest.
And you've detested it forever.
Forever. Ever since it started.
I haven't liked it either. There is something about watching hockey at night that feels infinitely different than watching it during the day. Okay, I get the Olympics because of the 6-hour time difference. But, you know, when we get back into this weekend and there's a lot of afternoon games, and boy, I don't like to set aside time during the afternoon if I don't have to.
Right. And I mean, if you think about a season ticket holder or a ticket holder for Madison Square Garden tomorrow, what time do they have to get up and leave their house to take the train into the city to get in to the Garden by noon to watch a 12:30 game versus Pittsburgh? You know, you're talking about getting up early in the morning and your whole day is shot because you're not going to get home until late in the day. And by then it's going to almost be dark. So your whole day will consist of having to go to an afternoon game. I don't like it, but then we're old school. It's I think the younger people of today are used to this. They didn't grow up just watching games at night. They grew up with games being all times of the day. So they're used to it and doesn't bother them as much.
I'm going to tell you something that bothers me, and we typically don't do politics on the show. We're not actually going to do it here. On Wednesday night, when Buffalo played in New Jersey, I thought it was great that Golden Goal hero Jack Hughes skated out onto the ice, arm in arm with Tage Thompson, and they took the opening faceoff together, and Hughes addressed the crowd. I thought that part was terrific, not only there, but everywhere else where Olympians were welcomed back after their performances over in Italy. But what I didn't like was all the politicism on both the men's and the women's side that took place in the immediate aftermath of their gold medals. And unfortunately, it became political, and I found it distasteful. I mean, we know that we have Republican listeners and Democratic listeners and independent listeners, and the political piece just has no place. It was great hockey, and that's what we should have been celebrating.
I didn't like the thing in New Jersey with Hughes skating out on the ice with a microphone in his hand like he was Neil Diamond and going to sing some song for us. And then Tage Thompson comes out and does all that. Can you imagine in Canada, if the Canadians had won the gold medal, that all of a sudden you'd have whoever scored the goal skating out in Winnipeg or Ottawa or Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, out there with a microphone in their hand to this raucous applause. I mean, I thought it was just over the top nonsense. I turned it off.
You know, it happens once every 46 years. You know, that's like half of Halley's Comet. It was an event.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't have been done the way it was done in New Jersey, in my opinion. I didn't like it. When you do the introductions, let him get his applause and then play. He's one of the players in the game. That's it. He scored one goal in 3-on-3. Okay? Big deal.
It is a big deal. It was a big deal. It's going to be a big deal. And I'll tell you what else is a big deal. You're going to love this because his brother Quinn is going to appear on Saturday Night Live this weekend. And then on Monday, Quinn and Jack are going to record an episode of The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon.
Good. That just shows you how shockingly strange it is that the U.S. would win anything.
All right, angry Canadian, let's take this back onto the ice because in that Devils-Buffalo game, Ukko PekkaLuukkonen made 27 saves in his first game since January 27th in what turned out to be a 2-1 win for the Sabres, but notable because we mentioned right at the top Quinn Hughes and Tage Thompson. And midway through the third period, they were intersected again because it was Hughes overskating the puck in the neutral zone. Thompson picked it up, fed Peyton Krebs for the eventual game-winning goal. So just a little bit of tie-in there. And something that also leads into our next item, because the Devils lose that game on Wednesday. They go to Pittsburgh Thursday, and they lose there also. So that is part of our next segment here, shifting strategies for the trade deadline, which is next Friday. And has anything really changed over the last 2 days? We're going to look at the Devils, Maple Leafs, and Kings. And so let's start with the Devils with those consecutive losses to the Sabres and the Penguins. Where is Tom Fitzgerald going now, which may have been different from where he was 48 hours ago?
I don't think he's going anywhere any different. They're not going to make the playoffs. And I think they would give back all their cheering about the gold medal if they could put the Devils in the playoffs. Wouldn't they rather see the Devils in the playoffs than stand and have that theatrics about the gold medal?
You still on that?
Well, because it's true. It's like, you get out there, you do all this hoopla-da, and then you crap the bed against Buffalo, and then you go in and lose to Pittsburgh. So what does it get you at the end of the day if you're a Devils fan?
Well, I think we can say the same thing in Toronto now, because the Maple Leafs lose back-to-back games in regulation, as the Devils had done. They lose in Tampa Bay and Florida. Now you're Brad Treliving. What are you doing here?
Well, it's a lot different story than what we just talked about because, of course, the Maple Leafs weren't celebrating their captain winning the gold medal for the United States when it's Toronto, Ontario, Canada. But if you're Brad Treliving, I think you're even more convinced now that you got to do something. You got to bolster your team for the future. And the unthinkable is happening. The Maple Leafs are going to miss the playoffs with a team that most Torontonians thought should win the Stanley Cup. So after those two losses, I would say Brad Treliving is working the phones.
They are now 8 points out and sitting in wild card 8 in the Eastern Conference. And now the LA Kings, who lose back-to-back games at home to Vegas and Edmonton. They get subpar goaltending from Anton Forsberg and Darcy Kemper. And on Thursday, the chance of fire Jim Hiller raining down at Crypto.com Arena, an 8-1 embarrassment coming on the heels of that game against the Golden Knights, where Vegas sat 5 Olympians. The Kings had a 2-1 lead going to the third period and give up 5 goals.
It's not good. Obviously, it's not good. And you know what? I think it's too late for Ken Holland to fire Jim Hiller at this point. That's not going to save this ship. This ship has been taking on water, taking on even more water when Kevin Fiala broke his leg at the Olympics. And, Artemi Panarin, as good a player as he is, and he is a really good offensive player, is not going to solve the problems that the Kings have.
The Kings are 3 points out of the second wild card. They still have 24 games left. So the opportunity for them is still there. But you just mentioned Kevin Fiala. And the last couple of games took a toll on the Kings also because Andrei Kuzmenko sat on Thursday with an undisclosed injury suffered in the game against Vegas. Yoel Armia exited that game against Edmonton with an upper body injury. Drew Doughty with a lower body injury. So, yes, you've got Panarin. He did have 2 assists in the game against Vegas. Looked relatively good playing first with Alex Laferriere and Adrian Kempe, and then moving on to a line with Anze Kopitar. But you just look at the collective here. The body language on Thursday absolutely sucked. And they were bad. This was a defeated club early in this game. They didn't get goaltending. Forsberg wasn't good, particularly in the third period against the Golden Knights. And Darcy Kemper was terrible, not even making it to the 7-minute mark of the second period against the Oilers.
And there's a few things that compounds this, because the one team that you don't want to get blown out against at home is the Edmonton Oilers, who have knocked you out of the playoffs, it seems like, for the last decade. Panarin plays his first 2 games at home. He's supposed to be the savior, and they can't win with Panarin in the lineup. And then as the game goes on, more people get hurt. And I'm sure if you're a Kings fan, you're sitting there seeing this ship go down like as if you're in a helicopter over the Titanic. This is just not good out there in LA. And I really don't believe the Kings are going to make the playoffs now. I just don't. And now maybe things will change and they'll get going, but I don't like what I'm feeling.
You know Ken Holland very well. You're in his shoes now, and compare it to where you were Wednesday morning when you're coming out of the break. You've got these players. Panarin's going to make his debut. You got the Golden Knights coming in, missing 5 Olympians. And you got to think, okay, maybe we're going to be buyers. Do they start looking to sell?
Oh, I would think so. I think he's going to give it a few more games. I don't know this. I'm just thinking that's what I would do. Give it a few more games to be sure. But in the meantime, you've got your coach who's dead man walking, basically. I mean, unless he can turn the season around with the Kings, which I don't think he or anyone else can, you've got to make that decision too. And you got to do it before whoever you're looking at to replace him is gone off the market, A.E. Peter DeBoer.
I guess you've made your choice.
I mean, he's the number one guy out there. Just like the year that Barry Trotz was out there after, leaving Nashville and Washington. It was a foregone conclusion Washington would hire him, and they did. And they ended up with a Stanley Cup a few years later. I think Peter DeBoer is easily the most tenured and winningest coach that's available at this point.
You had mentioned the Kings' nemesis just a few moments ago, and that being the Edmonton Oilers. And from your perspective, what version of the Oilers is reality? Because, of course, they had that 8-1 win on Thursday. Connor McDavid reaching 100 points for the 9th time in his career. By the way, it wouldn't surprise me at all if we see our second 2,000-point player in about a half dozen years from now. But that aside, big win for the Oilers, but it also comes on the heels of them blowing leads of 2-0, 4-2 in the third period, and then 5-4, losing 6-5 in regulation in Anaheim on Wednesday. So the Oilers' goals against average, it's 2.88 2 years ago, 2.87 last year, 3.34 this time around. So it's a little less than a half goal a game more that they are giving up. They are tied with the 5th lowest save percentage in the NHL. Tristan Jarry has not been any better than Stu Skinner. Connor Ingram did play on Thursday night. Paul Coffey is back behind the bench. But I don't want to overvalue that win on Thursday against the Kings because, first of all, the Kings don't have the firepower that the Ducks have. And the Kings were coming off a bad loss to Vegas the night before. So I don't know if this team starts to go on a run or if Thursday was just an aberration.
The Tristan Jarry trade is a failure. Stuart Skinner's numbers were much better than Tristan Jarry's numbers are. So that has been a failure. And they also gave up another player with Stu Skinner that Pittsburgh has now used to get more assets with a trade with Colorado. Brett Kulak, yes. And he went for Sam Girard to Colorado. I don't think the Oilers are going anywhere ultimately. I think they're going to make the playoffs, but I don't think they've got the depth and the game this year to go very far. I just don't. I don't see any consistency in them.
We mentioned the team that they lost to on Wednesday, the Anaheim Ducks. And in that game, Joel Quenneville, the second coach in history, NHL history that is, to reach 1,000 wins. Of course, the first being Scotty Bowman. And in that game, the Ducks temporarily jumped the Oilers into second in Pacific. They are now 1 point behind the Oilers, but they do have 3 games in hand. And with that win, they managed to overtake Seattle for third in the Pacific because the Kraken lost consecutive games on Wednesday and Thursday to Dallas and St. Louis. But let's go back to Quenneville for a second. And this completely different attitude in Anaheim this year. They got off to the great start, really hit the skids, particularly defensively in and around the Holiday area. And then they've righted the ship, and they look like a very good team and pretty entertaining one as well.
Joel Quenneville is obviously doing a good job there like he's done everywhere else. And it looked to me when I saw that video of the players giving him that jacket in the locker room where they all put on a little gray mustache above their upper lip before Quenneville came into the room. It looked like he's got that team all quacking in the same direction. And so good on the Ducks. It's about time we saw the Ducks back in the playoffs, and it looks like we're going to see them in there this year.
Along with the Penguins head coach, Dan Muse, could see some waterfowl head coaches being candidates for Coach of the Year this year.
Yes, we could. Definitely both of these teams could run afoul.
I'll tell you somebody that's not running afoul and is picked up right where he left off from before the Olympic break, and that's Islanders rookie defenseman Matthew Schaefer, who has now set the all-time mark for an 18-year-old defenseman, scoring twice in 55 seconds late in the second period in the Isles' 4-3 win in overtime in Montreal. This was a game that they trailed 2-0 and 3-2 late in the third period. Anders Lee with the tying goal, G.Pageau with the winner in overtime. Schaefer up to 18 goals, the all-time record for a rookie defenseman in the NHL, somebody you're a little familiar with, Brian Leetch with 23 back in the 88-89 season.
Yeah, and that's quite a mark by Brian Leetch coming out of the Olympics and on to the New York Rangers back then. But this Matthew Schaefer is the real deal, boy. He has changed in 1 year. As an 18-year-old, he certainly put his mark on the Islanders franchise. And for all intents and purposes, him and Ilya Sorokin and Bo Horvat, those three deserve the yeoman's share of credit for why the Islanders are looking at a playoff berth.
One other game of note on Thursday. Minnesota Wild beat the Colorado Avalanche 5-2. Avs playing on consecutive nights, having won in Utah the night before. But this was the heroic effort of the evening, put forth by goaltender Philip Gustafsson of the Wild. He made 44 saves, but unfortunately was unable to complete the last 64 seconds of the game because he took ill, threw up in his crease, threw up on his jersey, and had to come out.
Can you imagine what the inside of that mask looked like by the time he got to the dressing room? I mean, imagine throwing up in a goalie mask.
No. Jesper Wallstedt came in, played the last 64 seconds, gave up 1 goal on 2 shots. But besides this, Neil, and you can't look away at the fact that the Avalanche did manage 44 shots on goal. But I had said this early in the season that I know how strongly you feel about the Avalanche. I think everybody does. But this is the one matchup I think they're going to want to avoid. The Wild have won 2 of 3 against the Avs this year. They play one more game in Colorado next Sunday. This is a hard matchup for Colorado.
Yeah, it is, but Colorado's not going to get them in the first round, as you know. They've got a date with Dallas, so we'll see who comes out of Dallas, Minnesota, and Colorado will play the 8th spot in the West. I would imagine that they would win that round and then see who they take on. As you know, the playoffs are totally different than the regular season.
There is 5-point separation between the Avalanche and the Wild, but Colorado does have 2 games in hand. So, hey, remember our great interview that we had with the Van Riemsdykes last week?
Of course I do.
Just a word to agents, sponsors, anybody listening out there. Your players come on NHL Wraparound, you get some success. Because on Wednesday, Trevor scored the game-winning goal for Washington with 5:52 left in the Capitals' victory over the Philadelphia Flyers. It was his first goal in 38 games.
So you come on Wraparound and you score a goal.
And also brother James in Ottawa on Thursday. The Wings with a 2-1 win in overtime. James had to leave that game briefly. Took a shot up high, but did return for 3 shifts in the third period. Like we said, good news if you come on NHL Wraparound. A couple of injury notes for the Dallas Stars. Mikko Rantanen out at least 2 weeks. He missed the bronze medal game at the Olympics for Finland. Also, Radek Faksa has been put on IR, and Rope Hintz missed Wednesday's game as well against Seattle. And for the Winnipeg Jets, defenseman Neil Pionk and forward Nino Niederreiter out week to week. Josh Morrissey will not play in any of the 3 games on the Jets' current road trip. They've already won in Vancouver. They're also going to Anaheim and San Jose. He is marking a possible return on March 3rd against the Chicago Blackhawks. So speaking of returns, some actual good news here. And we don't have to go into great detail with everybody, but among the players that have returned coming out of the Olympic break, Logan Cooley came back Wednesday in the Utah loss to Colorado after missing 28 games. Braden Point returned in Wednesday's win against Toronto with 2 goals and an assist, and followed that up with a goal and an assist in the loss in Carolina on Thursday. That was only the second Tampa Bay loss in the last 23 games. You remember, Point had suffered a leg injury on January 12th in Philadelphia and missed the Olympics. Leo Carlsson back for the Ducks after missing 11 games with a thigh injury and a procedure suffered on January 10th. Adam Henrique back in the lineup for the Edmonton Oilers after missing 15 games with a broken finger. Brock Besser came back to the Vancouver lineup in the overtime loss against Winnipeg. He had suffered a concussion on January 25th. Alex Newhook returned on Thursday against the Islanders after missing 40 games with an ankle injury. And last but not least, both Igor Shesterkin and Adam Fox came back to the Rangers lineup in the overtime loss Thursday against Philadelphia. The Rangers 2-11-0 without that pair in their lineup. And as the trade deadline gets closer, on Wednesday, defenseman Tyler Myers for the Vancouver Canucks held out of the lineup, roster management, and Neil, we all know what that sounds like, but Myers did take what appears to be one final pregame warm-up with the team and expect him to be dealt. Detroit appears to be very high on the list of teams that are desiring to get Myers into their lineup.
Vancouver in full-out tank mode to try to get that first overall pick. It seems like they are just doing a whirlwind job with their management of their roster this season, I got to tell you. So we'll see if they end up winning the lottery to get that first pick or the balls don't fall on their behalf.
But the truth is, I don't even think they have to tank at this point. I mean, they're still 8 points clear of the Rangers and the Blues for that number 1 overall lottery position.
Right. No, they don't have to tank, but by the lineup they're putting out there every night, they basically are tanking.
Scotty Morrison passed away Wednesday at the age of 95. He was the youngest referee ever to work an NHL game at the age of 24 in 1954. He became the league's referee-in-chief and then later chairman of the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1991. 2 years later, he relocated the hall from Toronto's National Exhibition Grounds to its current location at the corner of Yonge and Front Streets, and Morrison was elected to the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1999 in the Builders category, and I know this was somebody that you knew, Neil.
Yeah, and I also know that building at the corner of Yonge and Front Street. When I was in college, I ran in the summers. I would look after a parking lot that was right behind that Bank of Montreal building because that's what the Hockey Hall of Fame is in. Scotty Morrison, of course, a great Hall of Famer, referee, Hall of Fame chairman, just a great individual, had a long life, and will be missed for sure.
That kind of segues into some of our upcoming programming, because over the weekend, we're going to be dropping the latest edition of our Hall of Fame series. And the current chairman of the Hall of Fame and one of 8 men to score 700 goals in his career, Mike Gartner, will be joining us. We had a terrific interview with him earlier in the week, and we're looking forward to releasing that show.
That was a lot of fun to have Mike Gartner on, a fantastic ambassador for the game, not to speak about what a great player he was in the NHL.
We'll also have short shifts on Monday, wraparound next Wednesday, and our trade deadline special coming up next Friday afternoon after the deadline passes at 3 o'clock Eastern. All of our podcasts are on all platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and YouTube. And if you can, please leave a review or subscribe. And our latest YouTube subscribers, Gerald Lane and Kintz. So thank you for joining NHL Wraparound's YouTube family. You can also find us on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Radi8.tv. Our website is NHLWraparound.com. The latest from Patrick Hoffman, New York-centric, what Ranger fans should focus on for the rest of the season. So check that out. And also Smith's Picks, which is now also available on audio if you've been listening to those. Neil has come out of the break 14-4-2 in the first 20 games.
Yeah, even a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then.
How many times are you going to use that line?
Many, many, many. I use it all the time. Even a broken clock is right twice a day.
And with that, we wish you a very good weekend.